this false sense of being open but not really being honest with ourselves without taking the responsibility of the learning process. It's instead this back and forth of training and tolerating toxic behaviors. The outcome is what the behavior where we have this entitled sense of an external display of unhealthy behaviors that remove accountability to the self-awareness of the program. When you first think about fake it until you make it, it's exactly what you see in your day-to-day. The look of sacrifice through the highlighting or celebrating. No real program of the day, invoking that energy and tuning it into invoking gratitude. Instead, it's this entitled arrogance which makes the novelty of the sacrifice. The key in our growth is not to look, but to become the reflection of what we seek. Not in simple surface adjustments, but in the process of the internal work of the thought and the feeling. Welcome to the God Hour. Let's get into this. Grand rise, guys and goddesses, kings, queens, occultists, alchemists, initiates, adepts, brujas, titans, celestials, healers, shamans, shamanesses, whatever you all remember, today is the only day that matters. Today is the only day that matters. You are the only one that matters. Because from this point, we understand that everything is a reflection either to be experienced or observed. You ain't gotta jump into everything, and you don't have to jump into everything that's based on someone else's experience, and you don't have to experience everything in order for it to be observed. Welcome to the God Hour podcast. I'm your host, Papa Lucifer. And this week we're going to get into lowered expectations, or better to suit it, Codependency Syndrome. When I think about these in lowered expectations and Codependency Syndrome, I think about the proximity effect, this thought process of just because you're close to it, that means that you can coast, and we're going to get into that. This aspect of looking at the reflections and understanding the continuum of change, and then embracing the aspects of what it really is to manifest. This is the God Hour podcast. This is season 4, episode 3. We're already 3 in. This is a perfect episode to end off 2020 to get us into 2021. But before we get into that, I'm gonna get y'all into that reading, and then we're gonna get into this week's session. I love you. Thank you for the support. I love you. We love us. Ashe. Before we get into this session, you know Papa Lucifer had to give you the reading for the week. Let's get these cards shuffled up as I keep my microphone straight. Get these cards shuffled up. First card in our pull is the Ace of Swords. Second card in our deck pull is the Sun. Third card in our pull for this week, the King of Coins. The fourth card is one of my favorite cards, the Chariot. And the fifth card is the Fool or the Journeyman. Let's get into this reading. As I'm looking at the Ace of Swords, the Ace of Swords represents the aspects. It illustrates to us that double-edged sword in the new opportunities. With it being a two-edged sword, as you swing, you're cutting out a new path. And as you're pulling back, you're cutting away the things that no longer serve you. So when we look at this, we're we're going into these aspects of, you're in a space right now, especially with the solstice now coming to that space and a great conjunction coming to that space, and this energy now into this space. Now you're looking at what to do with it. There's no going backwards. There's no going backwards. This is when it becomes very important to realize that there's no going backwards. A lot of times we come into that space, and as illustrated by the Sun card, we're in this new space of our new energy, on that path to our enlightenment, on that path to our healing. And sometimes we like to look back at those things that we've cut away that no longer serve us, and remember that continuum, the past, the present, and the future. And sometimes we get stuck on, but what if, see, they're showing some change, they're showing something different, something's happening. That's supposed to happen. Because remember, that's a reflection of you. You have made that experience. So now what you're doing as you're going into your healing process moving forward, of course you're supposed to be able to look back. But what you're looking at now is they're changing, they're growing, they're coming into their self. That's what's supposed to happen in that space. That lets you further know that you don't need to go back anymore. It doesn't serve you. You went through that process. Because what happens a lot of times is, as pulled up in the King of Coins, what I notice for a lot of people that I do readings for and clients, just in that aspect, is they'll be looking at their hand that they have in front of them. They'll look at their hand that's in front of them, and they'll wonder if they can go back and do a redraw based on a friendship or relationship, whatever it was. That you got the lesson from that. You learned from that. Because if you didn't learn from it, the King of Coins gives us the aspects of understanding, looking in our current situation, looking in the current situation of where we're at with ourselves, and looking at what we're putting our wealth into, what we're putting our energy into. A lot of us like to put our energy into things that truly don't serve us anymore. It's not enlightenment. It's not helping us charge. It's not helping us become higher in our soul. In that aspect, we tend to look back and be like, with that false sense of entitlement, like, I didn't do all that work in that friendship just for somebody to come in and get my benefits. You did what you were supposed to do back then. I didn't work all those hours at the job for somebody to come in and take my position. They were needed to take your position for you to move forward. We have to start looking at, in order to go forward, that's written through that chariot, that dust that settles when you move forward is setting up the new spaces for people that are meant for that position at that point in time based on their energy. You're not there anymore. You're no longer, we have to step out of this mindset of big fish in a small pond. Because it's easy to be stuck in that big fish in a small pond. It's easy to be that 90-day fiance mentality of, I'm going to do this for 90 days, and then at the end of it, I'm going to get something out of it. Stop looking for things based on this instantaneous mindset. Stop looking for things based on an instantaneous mindset. It's time for you to move forward. Stop trying to bring all of this energy. You're healing yourself. You're doing your vision boards. You're doing your meditations. All of that's meant for you to go forward and increase your alignment to your abundance, your natural energy of abundance. To increase your natural aspects moving forward into your prosperity. You need more room, but you have to create the space. That's where we go into this aspect of this journey. Or we look at the Fool card. The Fool card represents the aspects of the journeyman. Being open to see, being open to learn, being open to embrace, being open to this, being open and honest with yourself. You're not going in here based on expectations. You're not going in here on a false sense of entitlement. The journeyman, when you look at the Fool card, all he has is his bag, a bag and his dog. All he has is his animal instinct. All he has is his primary instincts and his bag with the bare minimum essentials needed for him to go, because everything he has is within. Anything that you're going to need in your going forward in your path is going to be there. You just got to take the steps. This is what I'm talking about with that Ace of Swords, going back to the Ace of Swords and cutting those old things out. You may have right now, I can guarantee you, because I looked at it and I fell in that trap of, I've had friends, family members, they would start saying things, but it was based on the repeating what I've already said. So they would regurgitate what I said, say it back to me, and at a point in time when I was still needing and wanting for something, needing for a friendship, needing for this aspect, I was still in the need and wanting process of myself in my work, I would be like, yeah, see, they getting it. So it means I can stay there. No. Listen to what they're saying. Doesn't it sound familiar? The only thing that what you have to do is learn how to add on to it. They're gonna say something, they can say something about, they just started reading on this and they watched Bobby Hemmett lecture, they watched this, tell them to keep going. Because that is a reflection of you changing your past. Where in your past, where you're in your now, and you're truly in your now, and you're embracing, you have gratitude, your past is automatically going to change to match that frequency. This is that continuum of your continuous flow of your energy. It isn't for you to go back into it. It's for you to continue going forward. It's to give you that reassurance to yourself that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Because you're not falling into the trend, you're creating the trend. You're not falling into trends, let me correct that. You're not falling into trends where they're seeing it as a trend and you'll be able to see it because what they're regurgitating, you're gonna see the flaws in that space because it's only a projection. You're gonna see the flaws within the space now. A lot of us have friends and family members that are doing certain things and then we're saying things about them, but we have to remember that we were at that point too. They're going through their process. Allow them to go through the process. Allow them to see. Only thing you gotta tell them is to trust the process. Trust the process. If they ask you what it means, tell them what it means. Keep going forward. Leave those clues behind. Leave that shit behind. Leave the trail behind. If they are humble enough and they're ready, they're gonna come into it. You ain't gotta force no one to go into your shit. This is similar. You going forward and going into the aspects of embracing your son, embracing your soul, embracing that love of yourself. Going into the aspects of seeing where I was putting my energy at all the time. A lot of us like to put our energy in all these multiple spaces, and then we're sad, or we get this sense of entitlement, like, I put all of my time into this relationship, I put all my time into this job, and here comes somebody with less experience than me, with less than this than me, and less than me. How they get it before I get it? That means take it like this. It might have not been meant for you. That relationship that you're looking at, it might have not been meant for you. That ring you was fighting for with that man, it might have not been meant for you, fam. He might not have been ready for that level because in reflection, you weren't ready for that level. Look at where you at now in the aspects of you healing. And you've healed yourself. You've done that inner work. Would you go back to any of your past aspects of yourself? What could they see based on that in that space? That's what you're looking at now. Going forward, especially into this 2021, I want you to really focus on further cutting things out. You cannot go into this new phase under the mindset of this, I'm gonna live out my resolution for the first 3 months, and when I don't get the expected results, then I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna love me for me. No. Be honest with yourself. Be open with yourself. Set the tone. You gotta make your space. Stop looking based on, because we get into this proximity phase where we're getting close, then we get scared, then we get into this reflective phase where it becomes true self-awareness, and then we start doubting our manifestations. It's time to stop doubting yourself and actually do this work. I want you to be the fucking best. I want you to exceed. the level of where it was what you thought it was. I want you to exceed those thoughts. I want you to set your intention. This spread is about setting your intentions and cutting that clear path. This is about bringing light to your intention and empowering your intentions and understanding how to understand how to look at how you were spreading your energy around and how to reconfigure it into your intentions or the feeling of that knowing of yourself rather than going into the expectation or the thought of yourself, what you were. Going forward, allowing that dust to be kicked up so it can settle and it can show you where the new lines are laying. Going forward in your journey without letting go of the things that no longer serve you. I want you to be the best. This has been your weekly reading with Papa Lucifer. After this break, we're going to get into this session. Welcome to the G.O.D podcast. I love you. We love us. Hashay. You feel like you got a voice? Feel like you got something to say? Feel like you have something that can move the masses or get everybody tuned in and you want a bigger audience? Whether it can be anything from something like the God Hour or anything from like sports, news, fashion week, whatever it may be. Let me put you on to something. The easiest way to do it is with the Anchor app. Biggest thing about it is free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will even do all of the distribution for your podcast for you so it can be heard on many other platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money. You also can make money from your podcast with a minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. It's everything you need to get your voice heard and get what you feel that's in your heart and enter to your heart out to the masses. If you're interested, download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. Welcome to another episode of the God Hour podcast. You know I'm your host, a coach psychologist, spiritual healer, shaman, Papa Lucifer. And I wanted to get into lowered expectations. It's a big thing when not really understanding that certain aspects of expectations, the higher aspects and the lower aspects, you don't want to set any type of expectation, but usually we get stuck within even the highest of expectations is low when you're going into your higher self. Expectations of your humanity. And one of the biggest expectations when we look at expectations, there's this proximity effect. This week's episode, we're going to be getting into the aspects of the proximity effect, understanding the reflections, and I'm going to tap into some stuff on manifestation. But when we think about proximity is what we confuse for being close to something or understanding it. When I think about proximity, I'm thinking about my thoughts go to the lack thereof of work, or usually when we feel like when we're close to something, we tend to plateau out or we tend to like close out because we really didn't set an intention. One of the biggest easy examples for proximity, I had a conversation with somebody sent me a DM. Yeah, someone was in the DM. And they asked me about, I don't believe in boundaries when it comes to relationships. Like, I don't believe in boundaries and someone needing their own time because it's under this thought process of it brews an aspect of distrust. And I spoke with the young queen and we had the conversation. We built in this conversation. And I was like, I think you're using proximity to establish knowing something. A lot of times when we come into a space, we use this thought process of proximity. And we feel the closer we are to something, the more that we know it. And in reality, you can be super close to something, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. You can be close. I'll use that as an example. I could have been close to where I had an expectation to be based on the work that I do now. I could have used old expectations of the expectations of my lower aspects of myself to set my tone for now. So I look at times when I was in my jobs, when I had jobs, when I was in restaurants, and I always use this 5-year aspect. And I remember, like, first time I had a job, within 5 years, I was a manager. I was holding keys. I had different responsibilities. If I use that same thought process in the work that I do now, it wouldn't match up. Because what I'm doing now is building from the ground up. It's a different set of rules in this level. And this is what we don't understand about these levels when we come into these spaces is we'll use the old proximity margins that we had planned for ourselves and we try to apply them to the present of the now. I could have easily used a lot of my old aspects. I've used the information that I learned from that space, but I didn't use those timelines. We're moving out of this aspect of time. If I use the old timeline of within 5 years, I was fully established in a job and had certain benefits, and usually within the first 6 months or the first year, most of my jobs, I was in a certain position. If I applied that same logic to what I'm doing now, I plateau out every time. I wouldn't be on season 4 of the podcast. I wouldn't be a good year in on my lecture series on my YouTube channel. I wouldn't be evolved into doing meditation and elevation, my daily rising after I leave the gym now every Monday through Thursday. I wouldn't be in certain positions. But see, when we get stuck in certain patterns of ourselves, this is where we start to taper off at. So we'll be looking at a position for ourselves or a thought process for ourselves, and we'll think just based on the old timeline, the old set of works, the old timeline, what we used to do, that it sets the tone for where we're at now. And this is just more than just your job. This goes for relationships. Everything has layers. Relationships, friendships, breaking karmic ties, understanding karmic balance. You're not looking at it based on this aspect of this proximity meter. We use this old proximity meter to be like, well, I did this, and this last year, so I should be able to get this, and this year. This is the aspect of the entitlement. Most times when we're doing this based on this when someone's not doing the internal work, it's based on tolerance and training through the toxic behaviors. So my behavior of me now, the way that I used to eat compared to now would be toxic to my new body. This is how you look at it. You're not looking at it based on good or bad or trying to bring these new weights to it. My old way habits of eating and what I ate, what I was putting into my system compared to now, it wouldn't work. So it would even to the way when I do my workouts and how I work out and my disciplines of what I'm doing now, I have to set a different set of parameters and intentions. And this is when we get into intentions versus the expectation. I'm not thinking about the expectation of me looking a certain way or acting a certain way or being in these external behaviors, because those are natural things that are going to occur as I grow. See, when you start focusing on the aspect of you doing your work, you putting yourself in that position of doing your work, you uncovering these things, going into the shadow, allowing that light of what your intention is set to do, and you allow it to go into that space and shine light on that shadow and bring you into that space. The things that you're not looking for anything to come up. Everything that's going to come up, you're like, oh, that's what you'll look at it exactly for what it is. Oh, that had to have come up. That friendship had to end. That friendship that I've always questioned. And this becomes the realest aspect of it. That friendship that I always questioned. That the things that I always questioned are coming up now. But they're not coming up based on the aspect for me to judge it and say, see, this is why I don't do this and this is why I don't do that. It's coming up so I can learn self-awareness, so I can grow in my discernment. This is a major key when it comes in and you start doing when you're doing your shadow work, going over the layers to the shadow work, starting to build your new space, starting to build yourself. I'll use this as an example. In the space where I'm at right now, I have everything that I need. I have everything that I require to create all the content and everything that I do at this moment in time, at this moment in the now. So I have no expectation if I need to bring anything into my space now to cultivate myself, to grow myself, to groom myself, I have an openness to the space. So I can take in the feedback. I can take in positive feedback. The same things that, and this is what you start seeing. Remember, the past, the present, and the future, they're all in the same continuum. So the same patterns that I applied, not the words and not the actions, the same patterns, and we're going to get deep into patterns, the same patterns that I applied into me building within that space where I was before, those same patterns I'm using now. I've now quantified these patterns and made them more efficient to staying within this space based on what I've learned. Whatever would trigger me in my work and standing in my now, whatever would trigger me when thinking about these old patterns of myself, those are the things that I knew were that the contradiction that I'm looking for as an occultist. Those contradictions, I'm like, I see why that worked then. I understand why it worked then. I understand what fueled it. And this is when we start getting into our emotional maturity. A lot of the things that I did back in the day based on my old actions and the old words that I used to use, the words, the things I used to say, how I used to act, it was based on emotion. See, a pattern, you can have an emotional imbalanced pattern, but until you understand why the words and why the actions added up to that pattern, you don't understand if it was based on impulse or will you indulge it. Where I thought I was indulging in life, I was simply living on a stream of impulses. So this is that stream of the aspect of fear. So I was moving through this stream of fear and it was connecting. So I thought I was going through indulgence. I was actually going through impulses because I started looking at the things that I was doing. Everything from the relationships at that moment in time and what I was escaping from, how I was acting at my jobs based on what I was escaping from and what I was going through in my home, my personal life. All of these things start to build up and they build that aspect of the proximity of your old self. So now that this old proximity effect is on the table, this old aspect of, not parallax, this old aspect of the axioms of these points of how I used to live are now on the table, and I'm looking at them above them. I'm not in the space where they're at. I'm now in a space where I can look down at them. I can study them. This is one of those major keys. Look at yourself and then you'll start understanding what you're doing now may seem may seem unnatural to what you did before. When you're going into the true proximity of yourself and you're starting to understand these patterns of yourself and you're starting to break down these patterns and you're starting to break down all these aspects and contexts and starting to rebuild yourself, you're going to start seeing what was now unnatural at a point in time. You're actually going to start seeing. I remember looking this, for example, I always ate in a healthy manner. Always. I was always striving to eat in a healthy manner. Like, I always ate. At this point in time, when I was eating meat, it was like I was only eating poultry and seafood at this point in time. In my mind, at that point in time, the pattern was healthy. So it was like, if I wanted a burger, it was a turkey burger. I was eating chicken sausage. I loved my sushi in that point in time. Salads. I really tended to stop eating a lot of certain things. And what it seemed unnatural within that space, because I was thinking about proximity. You feel me? I had an expectation. It was like, I eat this way, so anybody that comes in my space has to eat this way. Now I'm in the mindset where, like, you don't have to eat the way that I eat. You don't have to sleep. You don't have to do the things that I do. But the longer that you're within this proximity of my new space, it's going to start rubbing off on you. You're going to start asking questions, because you being in that natural space that's naturally occurring to yourself, and you're building that environment. Remember, from that no self, you build your environment, and then you deify yourself into that space. So from the no self, from the land of the nothing and everything, I create God Alchemist LLC. That's my environment. And then outside of that, I explained this in my lecture. Outside of that, I create Papa Lucifer as the automaton in that space. And then everything that I'm doing is married to Papa Lucifer in that space. If it meets up to that frequency, it becomes married to this space in the sacred energy. This is another key aspect when you start going into your space where you had an old expectation of something based on how you were and what you've been through. And someone to be like, I've been through all of these bad relationships, but you never learned why all of these bad relationships happened. You should have learned something from every one of the relationships. You were listening to the words. I can't trust no niggas' words. I only can trust actions. But in reality, you should have been looking at the patterns. Look at the pattern. The pattern is always going to lead you to where you need to pay attention to. That pattern, that quilt work. I remember looking at patterns and not really understanding the depth of patterns. I always had the same pattern in almost all of my relationships. There was always an escape clause. There was always one of us were always trying to escape from something. One or both of us. One of us was always in one space or mindset and didn't deal with a certain amount of things, and an equivalent correspondence, it matched with the frequency of where I was at. So then we're both back and forth in this space. But then after a while, it starts slowing down. And the only thing that can relive it, to bring any agitate or bring the agitation to the space to re-stimulate the energy, was more of the original pattern. More of the original action. This is when you start thinking about it. When you're trying to make something fit, trying to make something work based on proximity, I don't care how close you are. It's like I said it during Meditate and Elevate on Monday. A lot of people like to celebrate before they sacrifice, before they understand the aspect of the sacrifice. So you have this false sense of entitlement within your space. So now you feel that just because, use the simple example, we were slaves and we were held back and all of these things, none of that matters, because that's what happened at that point in time. What did you learn from that that's in the aspects of discernment and not judgment. I had relationships that had all my relationships, friendships, not even the love interest, but like even friendships, family ties. They had highs and lows. They had positives and negatives that gave charge to the space. When I was unable to carry the charge of that space, this is what you're doing when you start healing. You heal in a linear motion. You're healing in this now moment and becoming transparent. It heals the line, because it heals the aspects and it opens up to the future, and it heals the aspects of the past. This is when you start looking at that pattern aspect. So everything that I'm doing now is setting the tone, whether my mother catches on, my pops catches on, my sisters catch on, whoever in that space catch on, it doesn't matter. I know what I'm doing is going to cause a linear shift in energy. But in order for me to continue moving forward, I'm paying attention and I'm self-aware of the patterns the patterns in that reverberation of my energy. Now clearing out this linear space in that line, in that linear aspect, and what is clearing out. I don't have to go back and have a conversation with my mother anymore. This is when you get to that level in yourself where you're like, I cannot say, when you truly start applying the method of sovereignty in the works, and you're applying what you're applying. This is when that actually starts happening, because you actually are starting to apply things. See, for some of us, it's the cool thing to regurgitate. It's the cool thing to say something, or you're doing something based on, and then you're asking questions based on that regurgitation. You're doing it as an impulse, but not an investment to the change. And that's a major key. There's a difference between the true aspect of you doing it to invest into the change so you can evolve, and then investing into the impulse. That means you do it for a couple of days based on the expectation because you have an example outside of you, but you don't understand the full aspect of that example. I'll use that. Here's an example. I remember when I went to my mother's house, the first time I went to my mom's house, and I was staying there for a little bit, and I was sitting in the room. I was sitting in my room, I was staying there for that month. And I had incense in my room. I was burning sage in my room. My pops went on a job to go do something with one of his peoples. So I said, nigga, I'm gonna waft this sage around the house. Did the sage smudge, my first sage smudge in my mother's house, clearing the energy out of my mom's house, opened up the back door to the patio. And then I remember I went to work. I had to go out of town for something. I went out of town, I came back, and my mom was like, I don't know what you did, but when you did that thing with the smoke, it cleared out the whole, it just changed the energy in the house. I'm gonna need you to do that again. This is the point. This is your learning point. This is your teaching moment. I was like, Mom, what I did is I just cleared the energy in the space, lit the energy out. In order for that to work and continue to grow into this space, the things that went out of the space where you felt light and you felt when the reset comes back in and that pendulum swings back in and energy starts getting heavy and thick again, guess what you have to do? Acknowledge that energy. My mom looked at me and she looked at me and she knew what I meant. And this is the key of the teaching moment. Once you plant the seed, you have to let the seed, you have to allow the seed to grow. See, I invested in the change of the evolution. Now that I planted this seed and I planted fertilize this seed, I told my mom how to water this seed and take care of it. That's on her for that space. After a couple of weeks, she would call or text me, ask me a couple of questions. We had a couple of nice little talks. couple of conversations, and we went from there. After I left the space, while I was in the space, it was happening. As I left the space, it stopped. Now, some people, they'll look and be like, yo, see, that means you got to stay there. That doesn't mean that. Sometimes you have to leave from these situations so it can be seen for what it really is. When I thought about my jobs, and every one of my jobs have never been the same after I left, I looked at it based on ego, and I'll be like, yeah, these niggas ain't never going to be the same after I leave. These relationships ain't never going to be the same after I leave. I was looking at it based on ego, because in that same time, in that same continuum, the only reason I was saying it is because I missed something, or I felt the need for something in that space. Because the only way I was saying it about my jobs was when my pockets got light. The only reason I was saying it about relationships is because either I didn't have a ride, or I didn't have the money in the tank from giving people rides. Or I didn't have the same I didn't have the excuses or these lowered expectations that I could live by and make it like I'm higher than I actually was. That's major ego death, because my ego was dying at that moment. I was like, I can't believe my ego just took that hit. Oh my goodness. True humbling moments. And that's your key when you're understanding this aspect of the proximity. When you're coming into that space, when you're on the path to your space, when things start to seem really, really good or really, really low, high or really, really, really low, at either way, they're on the same wavelength. See, when we think about highs and lows, we think about them on two different levels. And remember, it's on the aspect of the polarity. So like the high and low, they're on the same linear line. My highs and my lows are on the same line. That's how they're feeding each other. My positive and negatives, they're on the same line. That's how they're feeding the space. What I'm concentrating on and I'm focusing on is my intention in that center, that middle point for myself. How am I learning from everything that's coming into this space? How am I elevating myself up this line and changing myself to a new plot of a new point, that new crossroads for myself? We have to stop focusing on, I've been doing this for 6 months, 7 months, and I didn't lose any weight, or I didn't do this, or I didn't make any money, I didn't do this. You're starting from the ground up. Start as the seed in the ground. Understand that you are the seed in the ground. Understand that you are tilling to the subconscious, that soil. Understand that you got to till and tend to this soil in order for you to grow and go higher. You ain't going to be able to, that one tree that you came from, you can't get, once you fell from that tree, apple, orange, whatever fruit you wanted, whatever fruit or vegetable, whatever you were on that tree, when that limb fall off that tree, it can't go back on that tree. When that apple fall off that tree, it can't go back on that tree. All it can do is fall and go through the process of putrefaction. The degeneration process, and start over again. You're starting from the ground up in a new space. So the old proximity meter that you used, it's not going to work. It's not going to work within this space. The way that you used to apply yourself to certain things on an external narrative based on impulse is not going to work in this land of indulgence. That's what you're going to have to understand when it comes to that space. And it's a scary thing when you start doing that inner work. I remember doing my first vision board. And then when I really got get it, I started doing a digital vision board. I got a digital vision board on my phone, and I got a digital vision board in my laptop. But that does not stop me from doing my digital vision board, which is I use my altars as digital vision boards. Where I want to be at, where I want to go, and I implant that onto my altar, and I light the candles to the intention, and I I match my energy to that space. So every time I walk by it, I see the candle lit, I know what I'm working on. I give myself that space in that moment. This is you aligning with your magic and using your magic in your space that works for you. But you got to go through the healing process. See, a lot of people like that based on the proximity. I did this, and this over here. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to take this outline and I'm going to layer it over this. And I'm going to use this same proximity in these same measurements in this space. It ain't going to work. This ground up building. Most of the things that we've done back in our past based on the trauma, just based on trauma alone, the trauma is the old foundation. So now you're trying to set up this new stuff and you wondering why it keep falling. You haven't established the foundation. So everything that you're doing that you think it seems unnatural because it doesn't have a foundation. And this is what we're going to get into in this next segment. When we get back to this, we're going to get into this aspect of these patterns. Thank you for choosing the God Hour. Y'all like it out there? After our bathroom break, welcome back. But yeah, so we just got into the old proximities, or the old proximity effect. And one of the biggest things in understanding the old proximities and why they don't work, the key to, they're not going to work because they're based on old patterns. And when we start looking at old patterns, when we start really paying attention to the pattern, this is where we actually can really doing our work. Words, you can break down words all day. Use words in any way that you want to use them in any shape or form. We know understand the words are spells, and once you understand the spell, you can use them to manipulate for your own game. What actions are you taking to use these words or use these aspects of how to gauge these words based on these actions? That creates a pattern. So when we start thinking about the old proximity of ourselves and how we used to gauge things and how we used to say things and what we used to, down to what you used to say in arguments, in your actions after the argument, those create the pattern. See, some people will say, don't listen to nobody's words, don't watch nobody's actions, look at their patterns. Here's the key. The words create the actions that equal the pattern. That's the formula to the pattern. So when I'm looking at patterns, if I'm observing from patterns, I'm able to learn from the experience of the action and then dictate and understand the words that were used and why they were used. The words are simply the aspects. People use certain words during certain emotions. People act certain ways during certain emotions. But the pattern is the feeling at that moment in time. See, for myself, I remember I had a lot of unhealthy patterns. And I bound a lot of my unhealthy patterns using words that made it sound like I had a certain level of depth to them. I even do it now, but it's more into the aspect of, damn, you ever remember, you ever thought about, even down to when, you write down a word and you think it don't look right, then you write it a couple times. You might write it in cursive. You might write it spaced out just to make sure it fit right. That's kind of like what you do whenever, you're trying to set this new tone for yourself outside of the old expectation. In a lot of these patterns, in the old proximity, we just got into proximity, this is where we get into this codependency syndrome. See, we become codependent based on words, or we become codependent upon the actions. So then this creates the pattern that is the codependency. This is based on that old this is based on proximity. So take this for the example. I wake up, or used to wake up, Same time every day. I used to wake up same time, probably same time. Like I used to wake up around 9 a.m. and go for a run. I go for a run. If I had some emails, I go check my email. I was always checking emails because like my boss or somebody would be sending me emails. E-Trade, like certain things would come through. That was my pattern. When I would get into a relationship, there was an expectancy for my pattern to change simply because somebody became involved into my pattern, came into my space. The way that I've always treated any relationship is I have a set patterns, and now that, and it's very big now, like now that I'm in a healed space as opposed to an unhealed space, I remember my patterns were set based on boundaries that were truly on an unhealthy dose of self, like it was a selfish or an unhealthy toxic boundary that I would put up based upon what I would be doing. Use an example. I remember something simple as I'm chilling at my crib. If I'm chilling at my house, don't come to my house. It's actually a very healthy pattern for myself now. But I didn't understand when I was doing it and the actions of why I was doing it. Because this is the old proximity. Don't come to my house after 10. Don't come to my house uninvited. Don't come to my house uninvited. So whenever this got tested in relationships, I shouldn't have to call before I come over. Why not? Because I'm your girl. I should be able to come over anytime that I want. Who said? Like, who made this a pattern? This is one of those unhealthy ass patterns. This, for me, coming from my perspective, that's an unhealthy pattern. I don't care if I've known you for 6-7 years. I don't care if I've known you for more than 2 years. If I'm at my spot and I'm in my house, if you're going to come over, call first. I don't care if you're sitting outside in a parking lot and you call me and say, hey, can I come over? I don't care. Call first. Because you don't know if I'm not at the house. Even if I'm at the house, you don't know if I'm asleep. You don't know if I'm studying. You don't know what I'm doing inside of my space. I say that to say this. When you're doing your work, when you're doing your internal work, it requires new boundaries. It's going to require new boundaries. The old boundaries based on the old proximity are not going to work anymore. Because you're going to start noticing when you're doing your internal work, when you're doing your shadow work, when you're doing your healing, meditation, setting your new standards, setting your new tones, the old proximities and the old patterns are going to become the distractions in your life. Those are what are going to become the distractions. And you're going to start noticing this. One of the things that I give my clients when we start their healing process is I give them the no contact with anybody for 7 days. And depending on, like, usually most of my clients, we start on like a Tuesday. We'll start on a Tuesday. So I'll say, okay, from this Tuesday to next Tuesday, do not call or text anybody. Don't even tell them that do not call or text anyone for these 7 days. So from Tuesday to Tuesday, don't not outgoing call, don't outgoing text anybody. If somebody hits you up with a text message, tell them that you're busy. Tell them that you're taking some time to yourself. But other than that, do not initiate any phone calls. I had a client last week start their process. Crazy as hell. It was crazy. By Thursday, when we had our re-up session, because he set up for 2 days out the week. You can do 1 day a week, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, just depending on how deep we got to get into your aspect. He's on a 2 day a week regimen. He's on a 2 day a week. Come see, we meet up 2 days a week via Zoom. And he was like, by Thursday, when he called, like, when we came through, he patched through, he looked at me, he was like, bro, Lucifer, just in 3 days, I noticed that I had more time on my hands simply by not texting anybody or calling anybody. I used to remember always trying to do the same phone calls every single day, and I had to realize why I was doing it. And then we sat there and I was like, you're understanding your pattern. You now acknowledge the pattern. Now we have to understand the pattern. Most of the times, it's similar to, I remember I was in a situation similar to this. And I remember being in this situation and it like messed with my head. I remember there was this one chick. There was one queen, one shorty. We had a normal correspondence back and forth every single day. Just on some friendship, getting to know each other type. It was like every rise, send her that nice good old grand rising, a good day text, have a couple of words in between then, have an aspect of lunch, after lunch, like she on a lunch break, I'm on my lunch break text, couple of dinner texts, after dinner conversations, you feel me? Like this went on for a couple of weeks. I remember one time I did not send a text message all day. Something the spirit told me at this point, don't send a text message. I ain't send a text. All day I didn't send a text. And I was itching. I had to itch. I was like, man, maybe I should. All these thoughts came up in my mind. And it was thoughts that didn't even match the wavelength. I didn't even know where the thoughts were coming from. We don't get deep into that. And I'm sitting there with myself and I'm like, yo, she ain't call, she ain't text, she ain't do nothing. Maybe she busy, maybe this, maybe that, maybe whatever. Towards the end of the night, it was around like 9. She sent me a text saying, hey, stranger, I didn't hear from you all day. I could either react or I could respond. That's the key. I could either react to the pattern based on everything I was thinking and react on impulse, or I could respond. I decided to respond. Now, this has happened to me before and I reacted. The first time when this happened to me ever, I reacted, and then the whole thing got weird after that because it was based on an emotional impulse. She was one of the ones before that. She was one of the ones that liked getting this emotional attention. She considered that an emotional attention to get that from people. So she would like rack up these text messages. In this one, I responded. I was like, yeah, I woke up and I started my day. I looked at my phone and I wanted to see if you was going to text me first. The only thing that she could say was like, but you're usually always the one to text first. And I was like, yeah, I usually am the one that always texts first. But this time I wanted to see if you were going to text first. See if you were going to put in the same thought process that I put in. got a little silent, went off the subject. The next day, she sent a message, and her exact words were, "I'm not used to this. I'm not used to the pattern of starting. I'm used to somebody else giving me let me know that they're thinking about me so I can react." I said that to say this because it went in line with him. He was like, I noticed that my reaction, like me usually in the first couple of days, it was hard. I was sitting there fighting the reaction just in these first couple of days. But then by the day, the only messages I responded to were emails from my job, the confirmation email from you, and a few other little emails that were about confirmation for things that I was working on. I was like, that's your new pattern. You're not going based on impulse. You're doing it based on, is this the aspect of indulgence? You're indulging in your true life, your true aspects of yourself. See, when we start working with these patterns and understanding these patterns of ourselves, we start seeing what was an unnatural pattern based on impulse or the emotional imbalances. And we start looking at the more healthy patterns, which are based on indulging, which are based on building and expanding. This is the aspect of your potential. Your potential has no limits. When it's your true potential, when it's truly based, synthesized, and sequenced to you, it has no limitations. You can build within it. You can go left, right, up, down, sideways. You can hit all of the points on that cardinal space, and you now can create your new pattern. The new illusionary pattern of circles within circles for yourself. You're able to actually start pointing out things and look at your actions and actually bring them to the surface because you're not looking at it based on an unnatural sense. I use this in this aspect like this when we get into a little bit in the manifestation in the next piece. But I've thought about it like this. When I wake up, yesterday, I woke up at 5 instead of waking up at my usual 5:15. I woke up at 5 and I moved my meditation from the 5:15 to 5:35. I moved it to 5 o'clock when I rolled out of bed to 5:15 to about 5:20. So I meditate for about 20 minutes when I first get up. Eyes still closed. Hit the alarm, hit my alarm on my phone. Eyes still closed. Straight into position. Take my deep breaths in and prime my system. Get myself charged up. Take my bottle of water and I go into my trance. What I'm doing inside of that space is I'm building my day. Now this takes that manner of time because you got to build the aspect of the pattern. You got to understand the old pattern of what you used to do to even do this. This is where a lot of people fail in their meditations and fail in setting their intentions because they're looking at the old proximity of like, man, after a couple of days of me waking up at 5 o'clock a.m., man, I can't keep doing this, man. I'd be tired. You need to evaluate your pattern. I'm in bed usually, even if I'm not laying down to go to sleep. This is the realest thing about it. Even if I'm not laying down to go to sleep, my day ends at about 9 o'clock. Like, for example, today I'm recording a podcast. So my Monday would usually go from I'm up at 5, gym, meditate and elevate. I got my list of things that I'm doing, editing videos, putting them on YouTube, dropping it on Instagram, all the way up until about now. Like I'm starting to do the recording. Around 8 o'clock, I'll be finally finished, done recording, mastering, editing, putting everything where it needs to be at within the podcast by about 7:30, 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, I'll sit here. I might listen over the podcast to listen to certain pieces, see if I want to change anything out. The final draft. Get done with that. I'll clean up my space, reorganize my space, and I'll make my smoothies for the gym. And I'll make my smoothies for the gym. Pull out my stuff, make my smoothies. My smoothies are blended. Everything's smooth and blended, copacetic. I go hop in the shower. It's around 9 o'clock. So my day's usually done around 9 o'clock. I'm done eating before 8. I'm done eating before fucking 7. Because I've quantified my aspects of my intermediate fasting. That pattern was so hard for me at first. Because some days I was in some Mondays I was in a flux. And I'd be like, yeah, I'm moving. But then I start forgetting certain things. Like, man, maybe I should have did this, and this. But now that pattern is so precise that by the time 10 o'clock hit, I'm laying in the bed or I'm sitting here in the living room reading a book. I'm reading something or I'm going over some paperwork, or I'm laying in bed and I'm allowing myself to fully wind down. I hit the bed around 10. I might go to sleep. I might be sleeping around 11. Let's say I go to sleep at 12 o'clock because I got into a good book or got into a good lecture or read something real good. So that's 12. By the time I hit the bed, by 12:15, I'm out. 12:15, 1:15, 2:15, 3:15, 4:15, 5. So about 5 hours, 30 minutes. I got 5 good hours and 30 minutes to sleep. REM, hit the astral realm, had some bomb-ass dreams, roll out of bed. That pattern by itself was, when you're looking and you're sequencing your patterns, you start seeing what distract you. The old way that you used to do things are going to start to become the distractions. So then now you have to discipline yourself in your new pattern. This is you growing that tree this is you cultivating that seed and cultivating that ground. So I'm cultivating this ground right here, tilling this soil, working on this space for myself. So now all of the old distractions no longer exist within that space. It doesn't mean that things will not pop up, but they're no longer distractions. They are things that I now accept because it either can become a distraction or something you're going to learn from. It's either going to be a distraction or something you're going to learn from. What action are you going to take in that space? That becomes your key to unlocking the healthier pattern. Now, me going further back, I remember I used to always wake up around 6 o'clock. I used to always wake up early. I remember for a point in time when working in restaurants, like, you don't get home until about 12, 1 o'clock. And then you got to wind down. You got to take a shower. So the shower going to give you a little more energy. So I wouldn't go to sleep till about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. So then I wake up. What time I have to be at work? See, my old proximity was the only reason that I woke up, because I had to go to work. My old proximity was because I had to go to work. My old proximity because I had to give my brother a ride or my cousin a ride or give somebody a ride to work. That was my old proximity. The only reason I was doing it is because I had something to do within that space that was external. So if that wasn't there, similar to I remember the years of not going to school, when you get out of school and it's in between your college, or when you get out of college, now you ain't got to wake up early. You ain't got to do all this stuff. This is where the unhealthy habits can be created. It's not going to be in this space of when you start something. It's going to start in the spaces of where now that there's something not there anymore. There's an external fixture that's no longer there. So like take something as simple as, and it's okay. But you have to acknowledge this shit. This is the main thing. You got to acknowledge it. It's okay to go a day. Like there's, I might go a week without shaving up and lining my beard up. Might go a week. Might go a week, might go 2 weeks. I went like damn near a month without a haircut or getting my locks retwisted. But there's an acknowledgement to why I'm doing this. I'm building a brand and I'm building a platform. So that's my sacrifice. But I'm not doing it based on the external sense of my hair, because I'm usually wearing bandanas or I got headbands on anyway to pull my locks back. So like that process of all that, like, man, I just put on the bandana. I'm good. That's my sacrifice. But when we come into the aspect of your pattern, self-awareness is going to be your key. I used to have a horrible habit of the amount of water that I drink now, as I grab my bottle of water now, the amount of water that I drink now is at a president of unlimited potential, unlimited proportions. I will drink. I drink Extensia when I'm at the gym because I don't like taking little small bottles unless I take a jug of water with me. And a bottle of Extensia is about 1 quart. I'll drink half a quart of water between being on the starting my workout to the end of my workout. By the time I hop in the car and head to the crib, I've drank a half a bottle of water. Or I've drank a half a jug of water. Either or. To get to that process, I had to implant that into my subconscious mind. And this becomes that major key when you're setting your new patterns. Where we fail with a lot of our patterns is we're not allowing it to take root within our subconscious, because we're not allowing ourselves to put things around it that are helping it be subseeded or seeded into our subconscious mindset. We'll do it based on that old aspect of expectation. So if I do this for 6 days, then I'm going to do this, this, and this. So then I got to do it anymore. So it's kind of like in one ear, stay for a little bit, then out the other. A little bit of regurgitation. It stay there for a little bit. I might repeat it for a little bit. But after a while, I'm going to plateau out of it. There's things that I do that are within the habits or aspects of my healthy habits of conscious and me being consciously aware of what I'm doing that I just cannot do. There's things that I can't see myself not doing. So then there's no burnout. Like I cannot see myself on a Friday, I'll say between Saturday and Sunday, not doing music. Even if I'm not doing a podcast episode, I'm still going to do some music. I actually did not plan on doing a podcast episode this week. I was going to let it ride and then do proclamation on Friday night and do a lecture on Friday night. But I sat here and I was doing the music and then the beat hit me and then I had a conversation and then the conversation hit me and it brought me into that space. I was like, you know what? Lowered expectation. You see how that's implanted? Implanted in my mind is always to create. That creator seed is naturally within my subconscious. So from the nothing, I can create anything. I'm not creating based on lack. I'm not creating based on the expectation. If I stop this week, then they're not going to listen to me anymore. Or if I don't do this time, they ain't going to love me no more. None of that shit. I'm not doing it from that level. So that's not the pattern of, that's the pattern of the most resistance. Most of us like to take this path within this pattern of ourselves that's based on the least aspect of resistance. That means it's not forcing us to change. It's not forcing us to grow. It becomes the pattern that we set. I'm going to go to my friend's house and we going to sit there for a couple hours. We ain't going to talk about shit. And then boom, 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 whatever, whatever, whatever. What are you manifesting inside of that space? What are you creating within that space? All you're doing is projecting. When we start understanding these patterns, we can fix the pattern. We can learn from that pattern and then recreate and then create the new pattern. Going from what was used to be natural to me is very unnatural to me now. And what is natural to me is based on the becoming of my true purpose, of my true potential, of my purpose. I can grow within it. I'm limitless. And that leads us into the aspects of manifesting. After this break, we're going to get into a little bit of manifestation. Y'all all right out there? And we back. Y'all all right out there? Welcome back to the God Hour. Reflecting the aspects of our manifestations. Understanding the aspect of the manifestation. Now that we've gotten into the aspect of understanding that the old proximities of ourselves, the old ways that we expected things to work, the old ways are not going to work based on you building from the ground up. What you learn from them aspects is what you should be paying attention to. So use it for the example of me being married to myself. Me being married to myself, unified the divine union within myself. That gave me a new ground floor to build from. Now, from the ground up, I'm building a new structure of myself in the aspects from as I'm creating and deifying the creation, the automaton that is Papa Lucifer. Me creating the environment that is the God called Alchemist, LLC. And this is all in a linear motion. So this same thought process, this is the spiritual aspect of the process that you'll be using to build everything else that's going to come naturally. Because naturally, now that I know what I am, who I am, now that I'm doing that extensive work, and I'm still doing that extensive work, because the work is always going to be ongoing. Now that I'm doing this work for myself, and everything that I build is following this new pattern. The key when it comes into following the aspect of when you're manifesting, you're setting your intentions, is you're removing yourself from the codependency. See, when you set the new pattern, you allow it the old things that were embedded in your subconscious left you codependent upon the external narrative to keep you in a certain way. So you followed a certain line. You followed a certain line of events, such as when we look at it, holidays, birthdays, all types of events. You'll wake up early on that day to go to this event. You'll wake up early to go on vacation. You'll wake up early to ball, as my man Derek Grace would say, to ball out or to act out an action to seem like you're doing something or you do it all year round. But it shows. You can tell when somebody's doing their work. You can tell when somebody's doing what they're supposed to do and when they're not to do. It shows up in the patterns of their life. So this goes into the aspects of you trying to manifest things. You can tell when somebody's been doing the work because when you looking at me based on when I'm setting up a tone to manifestation, set my intentions, the level and the speed that things come into my space is fucking phenomenal. Because I have certain set disciplines in my life. I have certain patterns that I follow and I'm instructed to follow by the spirit that lead me into the right space at every time. See, when you come into this old proximity, this is what happens like sometimes when some people are coming into the aspect of their first manifestations. Sometimes you manifest things and now that you're more consciously aware of it and you're having self-awareness, You can't sit, but I remember sitting there. I'd be sitting there looking at myself like, I can't believe I called for that to be in my life. Because there's no one else brought that into my life but me. I remember sitting one time and I was just sitting there really looking at myself like, I really manifested that into my life. Why did I bring that? Why did I bring this into my life? Why did I allow myself to bring this type of relationship into my life? The relationship with this job. The relationship with this person. The relationship with my family. Why am I continuously trying to pull this back in? How is it getting back in? I thought my boundaries were set up. How is it getting back in? Because I was using the old proximity. I didn't understand the pattern when it would come in. I had a friend. Same time, every year for the past, I'll say 4 years. For the past 4 years. Around this time right here, I get a call or a text message. Call, text message, email, whatever. Around this same time every year. Same conversation. Same ego trip. Same ego buttering up the ego to try to get something. Last year, I got that same conversation, got that same phone call. Last year, I got that same phone call. Something happened. Something switched. When they said the things that they said, yo, man, I'm seeing you doing your thing and you doing real good for yourself. And I see you doing good for yourself. And I'm seeing you out there changing, whoop-de-whoop-de-woo, all these good things of that nature. I was like, much gratitude, much gratitude. So my word went from saying, thanks for noticing. My word went from thanks for noticing to much gratitude. That's all I said was much gratitude. It's been a process, a lot of shadow work. We should hang out. I was like, like the good old days, like brought up everything we did back in the good old days. And I was like, maybe. I was like, probably not, because I got a lot of stuff going on. I'm trying to get this launch together for my clothing store. I'm trying to get this together. I'm trying to get this together for learning this music for the podcast. I'm trying to do a lot of these different things. All right. But stay in touch. I was like, okay. Hit me up whenever. That was the last time that I heard from my homie, my homeboy. Last time I heard from my friend. Now, prior to that, every single year, it was the same thing, same narrative of let's meet up, let's talk, let's chill. And the 2 years prior to that, yo, man, I needed, it's hard, man. Like, I had that job and the job fell through. I need a place to stay. So the first year that it happened, let him stay at my crib for a couple of weeks. Second year, gave him some money to stay, to get a place to go get a hotel room for a couple of weeks. And then it ended up, man, they kicked me out because of this, and this. Turns out that he never even got the place to stay. He gave the money to some chick. And this year, I felt it coming in. This time. I was aware of the pattern. I was in a different space That's the only way I can notice the pattern. This was 3 years into my healing. So the first 2 years, I didn't understand anything about manifestation. But then I look back, I was like, yo, I brought that into my life. And what came into my life came in based on those thoughts. So that came into my life. Then those thoughts came back up. Those unhealed thoughts that I didn't deal with came into my life, popped up. Action started popping up. I started getting tired again. Whole bunch of aspects started coming into the space. I was like, damn, I brought that into my life. I'm looking at this year, no phone call, no text message, no email. The only text that I got this year was from my mother. And I said that a couple podcasts ago. She said, I haven't talked to you in 2 months. And I replied back with the same response. I haven't heard from you in 2 months. And haven't heard anything from her since. What does this have to do with manifestation? The manifestation station. As I've always said, when you're doing the internal work and you're starting to set your new intentions, the first things that come up are the things that need to fall away. For some manifestations, it's quicker. So like you might say something as simple as, you'll say something on a lower level, I need to make $300. So then what comes up is everything that stops you from usually making $1 million, because now you set your intention as like, you usually go out every weekend, or you stop going out for 3 weekends, and you saved up you got 150 in three weekends. You saw how much you were spending on 150 in. So now you set the tone of, when you're setting the tone for your manifestation as things are coming up. So let's say for that first week, you stop going out every weekend. So that's $150 that you saved. This is bare minimum balling. I used to spend like $200-$300 every weekend. That's me, not everybody. Remember, you ain't got to experience to observe it. And you ain't got to observe it to experience it. But I remember, so let's say $150. 3 weeks, saved up $150 because you didn't go out them 3 weekends. So now you're looking at your life like, since I didn't have to go out last weekend and the weekend before, the weekend before that, and now this weekend, I noticed that my usual go get my hair cut to stay fresh every weekend. My haircut for me is like $30. That's plus tip. $35 plus tip. So now it's $150 I saved in 2 weeks from just not going out. That's 35, 90 plus 15. 90 plus 15 is 100. That's about another 100. That's 105. So 105 plus 150. That's 255. That's 255. Since I didn't go out them last 3 weekends, I didn't have to put that 20 in the tank or go depend on somebody knowing they didn't have gas money or pay for somebody. So that's an extra 20. 3 weekends, $20, 60 to that 2. That's over $300 in a month. That's the magic of your manifestation. When you set your intention, you have to do the work to align it. You got to remove the old filters and the old phases that stopped you from that. Remember, because it's always been there. You just have to uncover it. The same when you're doing aspects and working on yourself in your shadow work. It's always been there. You just have to uncover it. I got psychology books by my bed right now that I used to look at the printouts when I was in fucking
getting my bachelor's in psychology when I was at NYU damn near 2 decades ago. And I'm reading them books for leisure. They've always been there. The learning that I needed to do to apply to my new space where I'm at has always been there. You just got to uncover it. And this is going to be one of those keys when you unlocking those patterns. Because them old patterns, those are what are the distractions now. Those old patterns that you used to fucking rely on to stay within that space, those are the distractions now. So you wondering why you sat there and you meditated and you set your intention and you burned your candle or you wrote down your petition and then you wondering why it isn't happening the way you wanted it to happen. Guess why? Are you paying attention to what's coming up during the process? Are you paying attention to what's coming up during the process? And when you're looking at what came up during the process, how are you using and applying these new formulas to your life? Is it challenging your emotional maturity? Is it triggering a trauma? Or is it triggering an experience? Is it triggering your sight to observe something? These are some of the questions that you have to ask yourself, being bluntly honest. Ask yourself these questions. Because one of the big key factors is like, some people if you come to me for a natal chart analysis, come to me for the shadow work consultation, natal chart analysis. Now, since I've done this aspect of the work on myself for so long, now I'm getting deeper into the aspects of the human design chart. It's something that was always there, or I always knew about it. Now it's at the surface because it's my next thing it's the next aspect for me to work on. And I was like, what's next for me to do? What's next for me to work on and do and build on? Ask my higher self. Conversations lined up, information lines up, everything lined up, the stars aligned. It was in a great conjunction. Boom. Human design chart. I'm reading the human design chart information. I'm like, I've seen all of this before. Where did I see it at? Higher self. But I had to do the work to see that. That's going to be your major key. When it comes to you manifesting and bringing things into that space, you got to really pay it. Instead of looking for the result that you want and need, you got to look for a result that is required for you to move forward. Fighting that process and trying to make stuff work at the level where you're at, you're not going to get anywhere. That's like right now everybody's talking about the $600 stimulus thing. I already went on the internet last year and wasn't even eligible for it. It ate up whatever little bit of taxes that I owed to the tax people. So, okay, I'm not eligible for that. But that's not something that I'm dependent on. See, I don't have a codependency on that. See, I can focus on that, or I can focus on what I'm doing now. You always have a choice. I'm focusing on the work that I'm doing in front of me. Because the moment that I go focus on that, what's supposed to come in alignment on this space is going to drop and go past me. And I might get remnants of it if I go back and look at it. Damn, when did that drop? Damn, when did that happen? You ever been in that position? Where you were in the wrong place at the wrong time? You was in that space that you knew you shouldn't have been at? And then you go back into the space You had an undisciplined moment of thought, and now you was angry for the rest of the day because you had an undisciplined thought process of emotion. You allowed it to get to you, and then you missed your chance to do something that you really needed to do. Yeah, because you weren't aware of the pattern. You kept reverting. You kept going back into certain things because you weren't seeing the result for what it actually was. See, that's one of the major keys is like when the result pops up, when it pops up and it shows you when something comes up into your face, comes into the display, instead of you sitting there trying to hit the windshield wiper button and make it go away, you need to pay attention to it. That's why it came up. That family member, friend, that job, that position. I remember looking at myself one time and I became, this was a real big ego moment for me. When I was starting my works, and I've talked about this before, somebody that I used to rock with a long time ago. And I remember they were having a conversation about becoming plant-based and becoming more holistic with their lifestyle, more spiritual in that aspect. Had a conversation with them earlier this year. She said she saw my Instagram, one of my posts on my Instagram. So I didn't even know I still followed you on Instagram. And she was like, damn, why weren't you that way when we were together? And I was looking at her and I said, I wasn't ready for it. Straight honest question. There was no trying to get any, because when you get to a certain level in yourself, when you start manifesting, you start understanding your power and you're applying your works, you're going to really start looking at things like with honest answer based on compassion and not caring. It's going to seem like not caring to other people that aren't ready for it. It's going to seem like selfish assholes when they're not ready for it. But you're simply just stating your truth. I was like, I wasn't ready for it. But because of you bringing it to my sight, it gave me an entirely different aspect of moving forward. So I do thank you for that. I learned a lot from the aspects of where we were at when we did that. When we were where we were at. So I can thank you for that. She was like, wow. You're not this, it's like you're the same, but exemplified, like amplified. I was like, yeah, it is like that. This is a major key when you really doing your work, when it gets questioned, you can make the clear answer. You can tell when somebody's not doing their work or they haven't applied anything, because when you ask them a question or when you say something to them, it's going to almost seem hostile in their approach. And once let them be hostile, let them vent, let it out. Because after they vent, when someone's doing something based on impulse, based on emotional imbalance, they're always gonna come back and try to walk back over what they said. This is one of the major aspects when you can understand the pattern. See, when you're building based on yourself and your truth, there's no walking back on what you said. You continuously walk forward because you're open to, if it's gonna come back up, it'll come back up, so you ain't gotta worry about it. This is the major key when it comes in. You really doing, when you're working on your manifestation, when you're manifesting things and you're setting your intentions and you're learning your disciplines and you're grooming yourself and you're cultivating yourself, you ain't got to ever look back. There's nothing behind you. The only things behind you exist because they're still programmed in your memory. There's still a program within you that can pull up that file. Like I tell people all the time, I'm talking about McDonald's in lectures. There's a McDonald's up the street for me. That McDonald's is damn near invisible to me. If I was to walk out here right now and looked at the McDonald's, I can see it, but I can't envision it. It don't come up. It's an obsolete program of what McDonald's represented to me. So I can't see it. It doesn't register. This is what you're learning to do when you're manifesting, when you're setting your intentions. You're learning to take energy away from things that are obsolete, deleting and destroying that program so that you can now use that space to interface with the higher aspects of yourself. Same thing with when you're meditating. Everything that you're doing within the aspects of the spiritual aspect is to bring you into sovereignty, to bring you into freedom. Remember, it takes a lot more work. It takes more work to do what you truly want, than to do what you can. In me doing what I want, it takes a lot more work from that ground up perspective based on what I've learned from those old proximities, based on what I'm learning through these aspects of these patterns that come into the aspects of what I manifest. I'm not looking, and I've said this before, I'm not looking for abundance. I am abundance. What I'm looking for are the old patterns and the old proximities and the old axioms that I created based on filling the external aspects of what I thought was abundance or wealth. So now that I'm in this space, and this is years in the making, your work gonna be years in the making. But when you get at that aspect of time, that shit just seemed to fly by. I was sitting here editing a video today, and I was sitting here and I was just really sitting here. I was like, yo, I was looking at my memories, and I looked at a memory back from like 2011. No, it was like 2012. Came up across my timeline. And something that I said then, I'm actually living now. It was my aspect about, I'm retiring from working for people. By the time I turn 35, I'm going to be in my own business, doing my own thing. Doing stuff that's in tune with me. What I didn't understand then that I understand now is the work that I had to put in to really get to this point. Understanding that the old proximities kept me from getting to this point. Because there was many paths that I could have took to get to this type of point, but it was based upon the old pattern of myself. So I was either going to subject myself to the old pattern and then be where I'm at right now, but not have something would be missing. Discipline would be missing. Some aspect would not be in the place that it needs to be for me to be fully engaged in my space, fully engaged in myself, fully in love with myself, fully in alignment with myself. As opposed to, if I took another path, would I still end up at this point? Yeah. But I can guarantee instead of me being 35, the point that I set for myself, I'd probably be 40, 50, 60. But I took the most quality of paths based on the quality of me understanding the patterns of my best qualities. understanding my best qualities, and then working on my worst qualities, working on my shadows, working on my traumas, working through these experiences, going into that darkness, allowing myself to, if somebody came to me and I needed help with something in that aspect, allowing myself to be in that space and become open and be honest. Allowing myself not to look at it based on trying to judge things and looking based on discernment. Taking in this information because I could feel it. This is the aspect of intention when you're setting in the truth of yourself. You can feel what resonates with you because it's not going to be based upon thought. It's going to be like, a weight is off of my shoulders. And that's that key. Stay tuned for the plug talk. And then we're going to get to the closeout. Y'all all right out there?
Welcome to the Plug Talk. In the land of the God of Core Alchemists, all we doing is growing and building over there. You know, of course, if you are interested within services from the God, if you are interested within services from general readings to cutting the core readings to all the readings that I specialize in, to natal chart analysis. Now I'm offering human design chart analysis and breakdowns. Setting up that consultation, that shadow work consultation. In the shadow work consultation, within shadow therapy, is inner child healing. It's a whole aspect. It's not just the shadow work. We're talking about inner child healing and everything within that space. So when you do that consultation, when we do that reading, it comes up. What it comes up is what we start to tackle first. So hit me up at GottaGoAlchemistLLC.com, or you can inbox me or DM me. Inbox RodCallAnijas at Gmail, RodCallAnijas at Facebook. DM me at Papa_Lucy666 on my IG. I want you to be the best. I want you to heal. I went through the extensive process of my healing, and there's nothing better than the feeling of actually being able to celebrate in terms of I let go of all of these things and I feel lighter, I feel better, I'm really in tune with myself, and that's the main key. Go ahead and book that consultation, book that reading, go ahead and get that into your life. Especially when you're coming into this 2021, like there's no excuses anymore for your healing. Your healing is the most important part. Remember, you're the only one that matters because everything is a reflection of the aspects of you. Either you're going to be experiencing or observing it. You don't have to experience everything to observe it. You don't have to observe everything to experience it in that mindset. Tune in this Friday night. Gotta Co Alchemist is also a YouTube channel. Last week we got into polygamy, very deep into the aspects of understanding how to create from the land of the no self, in the mindset of understanding the sacred energy exchange. We got into that this Friday. You know, we're gonna get into something even deeper, especially with New Year's coming in. We're gonna get into some resolution building, might be a night Q&A at night. I don't know yet. But tune in 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you're listening tonight, if you're listening today on Tuesday, tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, RodCallAnijas, the Facebook channel. Tune in to tap in to tune out and get in there on the God Hour Show. You know, we do the readings, one card. I'm doing tapestries, all clothing and the merchandise. More is coming at the top of this year. And I might extend the discount code. Don't know. I might extend the discount code. Use promo code 20/20. That's the number 20 / the number 20. The numeral 20/20 for 20% off of all your purchases of $20 more at codependencyshopify.com. And of course, if you want to show that support, Bobby Hemingway would say the love fund, so I can continue growing and continue bringing out this information and doing this work. Lucifer Sami's Cash App link. Or you can become a monthly patron. I want you to be the best. In order to be the best, you have to go out of this mindset of the celebration before the sacrifice. You have to learn the aspects of what true sacrifice is in letting go of things that are causing you the emotional distress. That's what that sacrifice is going to be doing. The things that are triggering that emotional distress, those are the things that you need to sacrifice. But stay tuned for that closeout, and thank you for choosing the God out. Once again, y'all light out there, I shake.
You know we always do about this time. I just want to thank you all once again for tuning into another episode of the God Hour podcast. We've got into the aspects of lowered expectations. This codependency syndrome. Being codependent upon the old narrative, based on the traumas, based on keeping that existence, for myself, was a very sickening, distasteful, disgraceful. This is straight from this thinking about from not the Gnostics, because I was a Gnostic. I know that through and through. It was a disgusting aspect. I remember this dependency upon, and this is just for me in that aspect. Remember, you ain't got to experience it to observe it. You ain't got to observe it to experience it. But I was looking at myself, and I just remember like how I was at my jobs and my strive to work so hard. It wasn't a bad thing. But when it came time for me to expand, I didn't understand how to expand because of how I was using my jobs, what my jobs represented. When it came time for me to expand and become something more in a relationship, I didn't know how to do it because of based upon the original proximity that I set for myself. So anything outside of that space, this is where a lot of us are dependent upon the old narrative, especially when you think about somebody coming from religion, Christianity, or whatever religion it may be. You build a codependency based on being able to regurgitate. You build a dependency based on being able to regurgitate a thought process. So think about going into relationships. All you're doing from relationship to relationship, if you're not going through the healing process. And remember, this is not just love. Remember, soul ties are deeper than just love interests. I'm talking about what friendships and family and that same thing. You feel lost outside of it because you built a codependency, because you built a contract within that space. You built an agreement within that space. Within that space, you had certain proximities and parameters set in place so you didn't have to really expand. You had certain patterns based on those actions, based on those words that allowed you to be able to stay safely sustained in comfort. You had certain things that kept you from having to really modify your alignment because everything that you were manifesting was coming through the energy of that old aspect of yourself. But now that you're removed expectations, this is when the pattern of the codependency came in to what you were dependent upon in order for you to charge yourself. When you start doing this work of understanding, I did that to keep myself charged. You start looking at your urges. You start looking at how your sexual appetite is not a bad thing. It's just how you were using your sexual appetite. You start looking at how you use the aspects of why you always wanted to be at every event, why you were always celebrating and highlighting these negative aspects. But when it came to time to sacrifice, when it came time to discipline, when it comes time to discipline, you wonder why you fall off, why you plateau, why you always plateau out, why you always get to a certain point, then you go back. It's because you have a codependency issue. Is your codependency within the patterns? Is it within the old proximities that you set for yourself? Or is it based on the old ways that you used to manifest things into your life, or brought yourself into alignment to manifest things into your life? These are the aspects, and we're going to get deep into it throughout the week. But I wanted to set the stage because what's about to happen on the 31st? You're going to see every text, every message on Facebook, Instagram, on social media, talk about New Year, New Me. Do not be one of the ones talk about New Year, New Me. I shouldn't have to wait for a new year to become the new me. That's obsolete thinking. I'm no longer celebrating before I learn the aspects of sacrifice. I'm no longer going to stay locked in my lowered expectations and become codependent on others to accept me based on my expectation. I'm open, therefore I am thankful. I am grateful and gracious because I am honest. Matter of fact, I'm gonna give y'all my mantra that I give myself. I say this every rising when I wake up. I'm gonna give y'all the mantra. We gonna get back into mantras later on in this back in the episodes. Where's my mantra? Here it is. This is my mantra. I am thankful, I am grateful, I am gracious. I am thankful, I am grateful, I am gracious. I am thankful, I am grateful. I cannot be thankful until I am first open to myself. I cannot be thankful until first being open to myself. I am thankful, I am grateful. I cannot be grateful until first being honest with myself. I cannot be grateful until I am honest with myself. I am gracious. I am in gratitude. I flow through the energy of my gratitude. I have the gratitude and much gratitude to whatever is brought for me to learn. Because as I learn, I am able to reach into my potential and my purpose to become the example, and that is what teaches. As I become the example of what I apply, I naturally become the teacher. But first, I must be open and honest and become that student. And I say this to myself every single time I wake up. While I'm doing my meditation, I slide it in when I do my meditation around 5 a.m. I'll slide it in again around 11 o'clock after I'm done doing meditate and elevate. I'll slide it in again before I do something else. I slide it in the same times every single day to build that pattern till it becomes a natural pattern in my day. It's in my subconscious. It's locked in. It's ready to go. I want you to be the fucking best. I want you to be fucking great. But the only way to be great is to do that work. Step up. Because only a few of us going to step in. A few of us going to step up. Only a few of us going to step into it. And even fewer are going to build once they in their potential and their true purpose. It's been another episode of the God Hour Podcast. I appreciate your support. I appreciate the love and you tuning in every single week. Share, become a patron, let the knowledge do what it's supposed to do. I'll see y'all throughout the week. I'll see y'all throughout the week. I love you. We love us. Ashe.